So, Dee, do you have special clothes you wear for special gardening tasks?
Well, I do. I wear specific clothes from Insect Shield for, keeping the ticks off of me, but I don't think that's what you mean.
No, it's not. I woke up the other day and I thought this is the day to trim back the Amsonia, which has that gluey, sticky sap.
Ugh.
I have a pair of gardening pants that are ruined with that sap. And I threw those things on and ran out there and finished that job and then came in and changed and had breakfast.
Okay, and we've talked about this before. Good for you, first of all. Amsonia doesn't reseed in my garden at all, but in yours, this is why you cut it back, right?
Oh, yeah. It likes to reseed like crazy and it wants to put roots down to China and establish itself as the dominant plant. And we aren't allowing that.
There's a lot of plants in this garden that do that too. No one wants that. But before we get much further along in our Amsonia quest, I will start this episode. Welcome to the Garden Angelus, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, where I garden on an acre and a half out of 7.5 acres, way out in the boondocks.
And I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana. I have a suburban garden measured in square feet. It's about a third of an acre.
We call ourselves Garden Angelus because we are evangelists for gardening. We love gardening, and we want you to love it too.
Yes, we do. And we aren't afraid to spill the beans and tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. But that's enough of who, what, when, where. Let's move on to this week's episode. Hello, Dee.
Good morning, Carol. Tell me all about your garden.
I shall tell you. So, as mentioned, I did cut back the Amsonia. And then after I changed back to regular gardening clothes, I pulled out all the lettuce that was bolting and the few bits of radishes and threw that all in the compost pile. And the radishes that I had planted, the onions that I had planted between the rows, they were not
Yeah,
very happy. And so hopefully they'll start bulking up because I saw the picture of your onions. They're beautiful. Mine are nowhere near that.
those are the prettiest onions I've ever grown in my life, and I have
Uh,
no idea why.
yeah.
I really don't. I grew them in the same old places, kind of. No special new soil. Maybe it was the weather this year. Anyway,
Could
keep
be.
going.
So I had mentioned last week, I think, that I was thinking about putting green beans between those onion rows. But really, those onion rows are too close together. But at the end, where I didn't put anything between the lettuces, there was room for some more green beans. So I sowed another batch of green beans. And then this is a sad moment, Dee.
Oh, let's take a moment. What happened?
So my pea vines, I have never seen the powdery mildew on peas like I had this spring.
Here too. What the heck?
I know there's one variety out there. I think it's snappy or something that doesn't have any, but everything else, it's like, okay, this is gross. And I yanked it all up, threw it in the trash bag and put it out in the trash. I mean, and just like puffs of white powdery mildew dust everywhere. I'm thinking, this is a nightmare. These
Yep.
peas next year have to be at the way other end of the garden, way
Yeah, they
other
do.
end.
Mine too, because boy, I have never seen mildew. Well, but the truth is, it was so humid and warm and rainy this spring. I am seeing disease like you wouldn't believe. But the peas, they were awesome in their disease. I mean, just,
Oh, they were outstanding in their disease. But anyway, I did get a few before all that mess. And my
yep,
tomatoes are doing great. And I've started pruning those and tying them up because they're getting to be that size. And
yep,
now, it's like the pendulum swings and the peppers are sulking as peppers do.
they do
They're
sometimes. Yeah.
sulking, but it's going to get hot next week and they'll either bounce out of it or something. But other than that, I weeded, I mowed, and I'm getting ready to start pruning all the shrubs. And I'll tell you about that when I get to the commissions. But I did go ahead and do a round of fertilizing all the containers last week too, first round. So how about
Good
you?
job. Oh, so much. I have worked in the garden every day this week. A couple of times you've written me, and I'm like, I can't talk. I can't talk. I'm working too hard. I'm an open garden for the National Daylily Convention next week. That's not the same as a tour garden. Remember, I said I'd never be a tour garden again.
Right.
Open gardens don't have the same restrictions. And then the Oklahoma County Master Gardeners are coming. And then the Oklahoma Gardening Association found out that they were coming. And so they said, can we come too? And I said, sure, why not? So they're all coming. And so I've been sprucing up. So I've been cutting back, pulling weeds, deadheading. And this morning, Bill and I cut 2 limbs out of a tree, an oak tree that is right outside my kitchen window. Huge limbs. We broke off one of my liriopes. It was kind of sad, but that's okay. And then let's see what else. He's feeling a lot better. And we wanted to bring more light into the kitchen garden. But that
Right.
was, and in fact, I filmed him doing one of the limbs. It'll be interesting to see how it comes because I dropped my camera right when it came off. And then let's see what else. I cut the diseased leaves out of my tomatoes. I think I'm going to feed them some fish emulsion because they need a little something something.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the disease in my garden this year. And then let's see, I planted the sunflower seeds for the 3rd time. This time I hid the seeds between the common milkweed
There you
to
go.
stop the crows. And then I had planted some zinnias down in my tiered garden beds outside the kitchen, and something came along and ate them all. Just when they gotten to be, 2 inches tall. And let's see, and those were the special zinnias, of course. And let's see, I worked every day in the garden because we didn't go to Big Cedar this year, but I still took it as vacation, a working vacation. And I just worked and worked and worked. That's all.
Very good. Well, I did plan out the Concert Bells sunflower seedlings.
Yes.
Haven't looked at them since Friday, but I think that they're probably okay out there. So we shall see. So let's play favorites. You got an exciting favorite.
My favorite is exciting. So remember Verbena Bampton?
Can't forget it. I got a big pot of it growing out there.
Is yours starting to bloom yet?
It's got just the tiniest little flower buds, so it's getting there. But
It is such a cool plant.
the verbena vanity that came back up front, I mean, it's blooming gloriously out there.
Yeah, I also bought some verbena lollipop at Home Depot and it got mildew. So I chopped it all the way back and now all the new growth doesn't have mildew anymore. Just
Very
a thought.
nice.
But my verbena Bampton made its own little seedlings in one of my pots. I recognized them and I sent you a little video and said, oh
Yes.
my goodness. So I had bought one plant because I'd always had trouble sprouting it. And then you winter sowed yours. And I was like, next year I'm winter sowing. Well, I did winter sow and I didn't even know I did it.
Exactly.
So I'm pretty excited about that. I moved all the little seedlings to a whole bunch of pots out on the old driveway, and it'll unify that whole section, I hope.
Very nice. Very nice. So my favorite this week, it's the oak leaf hydrangea over on the west side of my house.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when they used to send us shrubs in quart pots. So this thing probably had 2 leaves and was 6 inches tall.
I know it took forever for them to grow, right?
And it's so far back, I am not even sure. I know Proven Winners gave it to us. But this thing is like 4 feet tall and 4 feet wide, and it is just covered with beautiful creamy white blooms. And I know it'll be spectacular fall color. So I thought, I wonder what this one is. So I went to their website and they have this Gatsby series, but none of the flowers on those look exactly like this one.
Huh.
So I don't know if it's the Gatsby series, but I'm going to tell you it's a Proven Winners oak leaf hydrangea. And so you could not go wrong with any of theirs if they have improved upon this one, because this one is glorious.
Yeah, every year they do more work with hydrangeas and they just get better and better. I really want the firelight one, but we'll see. So I'm excited for your hydrangea. And I did have one of the Gatsby series that came to me because I have a label for it, but it burned up. So I lost it. But that happens. Yep. Okay, so our question of the week. Why doesn't my hydrangea bloom? That one and the peony, why doesn't my peony bloom? Those are the 2 we get a lot. So why didn't someone's hydrangea bloom? Carol, what do you think?
Well, I got this question on Thursday. So the guy that built my house 27 years ago, every once in a while I'll get a call. He says, Carol, I got a gardening question.
How
And
fun.
so his aunt was visiting from Michigan and she was complaining that her hydrangeas never bloom. So she's in Michigan. So
Hmm.
what I tell people is you probably have the big leaf hydrangea. That's the one
Hmm.
they sell at the garden center and it's covered with great big pink or blue blooms. You take
Yeah,
it home and then it never blooms again for you. And the reason is they bloom on old wood.
right. Could be. Could be that. And here's the thing, bloom on old wood. Okay, so let's just say that's hydrangea it's either macrophylla or microphylla. I don't suggest those for Oklahoma unless you have just the right spot, but you can grow them here. And they're trying to create new ones that bloom on old wood and new wood, and they're doing a pretty
Right.
good job. They're getting better and better. But what happens with these older hydrangeas is people either prune them back in the fall.
And prune off the flower buds.
Yep. Or you have a really hard winter where they just die all the way to the ground.
Yep.
That happens here a lot. Or they don't die all the way to the ground and we get one of those crazy freezes right about the time that the buds start to really take off. And that ends that too. So
Yes.
my advice is don't plant those old ones. And if you have old ones and you want them to bloom every year, I'd replace them with one of the newer versions.
That would be good advice. What I said was just leave the doggone thing alone until well into the spring when you know that. And by the way, I just got a text
Did
from
you?
Teresa Byington
Uh-huh.
with a rose recommendation, which means she must have listened
Oh,
to
yeah, yeah.
our podcast from last
She
week when I
did.
said the rose is the wrong color. Anyway,
Yes.
let me silence.
Sorry.
That's okay.
She got a little distracted there. What you suggest is that they don't do anything to it and leave it alone so that it can just do its thing.
Yes,
Another suggestion would be when it does bloom and you're done with those blooms, you can just gently snip those off.
exactly. Just to tidy those up, but don't cut anything else.
My suggestion is grow Hydrangea paniculata, which is the one with the pointed blooms, beautiful leaves, or Hydrangea quercifolia, which we just talked about. That's the oak leaf, and they come in all sizes now. Now, I will say, Proven Winners has sent me two new hydrangeas. One is the cutest little tough stuff. It might be tough stuff, twist and shout, but it's sitting on the east side of my garage. And I have to say, that little darling, and it's in the microphylla class, that little darling has bloomed its little heart out this year. And it was the tiniest little plant last year. It was in a quart. And then this other one they sent me, I'm getting ready to move because I put it in the wrong spot and I'm going to put it next to this one. But this little tuffy stuffy thing, whatever
Yeah.
it is, it has those lace cap blooms, which I
Yes.
personally love. Oh my
Those are
gosh, love
beautiful.
them. Love, love, love. So
Anyway,
that's our answer. Would you like to do the quote?
I will do the quote. Sometimes something can look beautiful just because it's different in some way from the other things around it. One red petunia in a window box will look very beautiful if all the rest of them are white, and vice versa. Andy Warhol.
And he did that all the time in his paintings and his lithographs. You know, he made one thing a different color. It was really cool. Anyway, flowers. The reason we chose that is because we're going to talk about growing petunias from seed. And then you wrote, "It's easy," and it
It
is.
is
And
easy.
I,
It
I
is.
thought, I thought it would be fun to talk about something easy. And I used to not like petunias very much, but I have changed my mind,
As one does.
as one does, because you know what? They're coming out with some really good petunias now.
Right. And so if you want to grow them from seed, though, it's easy. The seeds are tiny. Don't let
Tiny,
that scare you. You'll be so confident. Spread them over the dirt, barely cover, keep
barely.
moist. And we're
Mhm.
talking about indoor sowing about 8 weeks before you'd plant them outside. They
Right.
do tend to germinate quickly.
Yes.
So the one thing is, you have a greenhouse, so you could start yours early and you could have them grown from seed and be flowering about the time that they're flowering at the garden centers. Mine would not be
Or,
that way.
or you could wait until the last minute and sow them like I did this year because I just didn't have room in my greenhouse and they still worked.
Yeah,
So I
mine
was
are
so happy
blooming.
with them. And I want you to, yeah, mine are blooming and actually look fresher than the ones I bought at the greenhouse
Bingo.
because they've had more time.
Bingo. They do often look fresher and they're not as leggy because in the greenhouse, I mean, they've kind of been forced to bloom before their time. And so like the old adage of when you buy those annuals and they're already in flower, cut off the blooms and then they'll bulk up a plant. That is true of these petunias too.
And there's a whole bunch of them you can grow from seed now. And so I thought we'd talk about a couple of them. And one of them is Success, exclamation point, Silver Vein. And we got seeds for this. I don't know if
I didn't.
Did you get
I
seeds?
didn't.
I did.
No.
And I don't know if I got them last year or this year. I'm sure I got them from National Garden Bureau because I wouldn't have bought petunia seeds. And I thought this year I am going to sow those babies. And I did. And I sowed them late. And I just thinned them down to one plant per cell, whatever size cell you want, right? And they've done great. And I put them in this little west-facing bed, and they have the biggest flowers. That's one of them. The other one I grew is, let me make sure I get this right. Well, I've grown the wave petunias from seed many times. And even though you can buy them in the store, like you said, if you grow them from seed, you get them at just the right time. And they're even more beautiful than they are in the store, I think. And then number 3 was the climbing petunias. Have you ever grown those?
I haven't.
I haven't either. I grew them this year for the first time, bought them from Select Seeds, which I'm in love with Select Seeds. And didn't you tell me that they're in Indiana?
No.
That company? No, but then they're up north somewhere. I might be
keep
wrong.
Talking and I'll tell you where they're at.
She's going to look it up. Anyway, Select Seeds always has weird stuff like this heirloom climbing petunia that they have. And I bought that. And one of them came out purple and one of them came out dark pink. And so they come in a variety of colors. And what they are is they're just long growing, but they do have a vertical growth habit. So I put them on a trellis and they just look great in this pot that I've grown them in. And then I also got Verbena Bantam from them. So I think they're a good company. You can buy plants or you can buy seeds. And you've brought up something that I didn't know about petunias.
What was that?
That they're related to Nicotiana. I didn't think about, but of course they are.
But park that for a minute, because I did want to say last year I got Carmine Velour wave petunia seeds from All American Selections, and that thing was gorgeous. And I just had them in a container by themselves, and they were blooming all the way up through frost and beyond. And I'm still looking to see where Select Seeds is, and it's like it's really not obvious on their website.
Interesting. So Carmine Velour is probably my favorite of the wave petunia colors, actually. And here's the thing. They've created petunias now that can handle a lot more heat than they used to be able to. And since we're talking about growing them from seed anyway, we might as well talk about care. About this time in Oklahoma, you need to cut them back a little bit. I'm waiting until after next week when people come to visit, but then I'm going to trim them all back so that they don't. Some petunias still go to seed. Some of them have been created so that they don't go to seed. Therefore, they produce more flowers. If you're going to grow them from seed, obviously you want the ones that make seed, but you've got to cut the petunia back in order to get it to produce more flowers, because once it starts producing seeds, then it's not going to want to flower anymore. And it gets leggy and ugly. And then feed them too after you do that. I learned that last year when I did that little promo, a series for wave petunias, and it made all the difference, actually. They did really well. Did you ever find it?
Select Seeds is in Connecticut.
Okay, well, there you go. I have to say, I've had great, great luck with both their plants and their seeds. So even though they're in Connecticut. And right now, if Matt Madison listens to this podcast, he'll be laughing at me because I thought they were in Indiana. I don't know why I thought that.
No, they're not in Indiana. I knew they weren't in Indiana. Okay, so let us talk about the
Nicotiana.
Petunias and Nicotiana are related. Yes, they're both in the Solanaceae family, along with tomatoes and peppers.
And of course they are, because they have fuzzy leaves and they have a similar growth habit in some ways.
Well, peppers don't have fuzzy leaves.
No, not peppers. I'm talking about petunias and Nicotiana.
Yes, and this relates to the self-sowing nature of them.
Right, and also the tiny seeds.
Yes, because my Nicotiana just self-sows all over the vegetable garden. Not all over, but around where it's been growing. And I let new ones come up, and I never lack for enough to have in the garden. Of course, I don't care about the variety or anything, just the white ones.
Yeah, mine are all different varieties. I have both the white ones, and then I also have, which I grow only the lonely of the white series. It's so fragrant. And then I also grow a series called Lavender Cloud, which is out of Hudson Valley Seeds, which is also not in Indiana.
That is correct. That is in New York.
Duh. Okay, you want me to do the quote?
Well, no, I have one more thing to say. So the petunia seeds that I sowed this year, I just bought a packet of Royal something. Anyway,
Okay.
from Burpee that I bought at
Yeah.
Menards.
Yeah.
And
I knew it was a Menards packet.
they're just starting to bloom. And, I think that little kick of fertilizer I gave them last week told them to go ahead. Anyway, I wrote
And
a
the
little blog
heat.
post today because the one petunia that's blooming, and these could be, according to the packet, purple, white, magenta, red, all colors.
Mm-hmm.
The one that's blooming right next to this Angelonia that I bought at the greenhouse, not knowing where I would plant the Angelonia. These are all in what I call my miscellaneous container, where it's like, I don't know what to plant here. Okay, I'll throw these in here. Perfect match.
Good. Isn't that nice when that happens?
A plus.
A plus. A plus for Carol.
Yes.
Okay,
Now
you ready
do that
for the
quote?
quote?
Yes, I am.
The thin layer in which life exists is both fragile and resilient. The earth does not need us, which is why we should care about it. Eric Walsh. I know nothing about Eric, but I agree with this.
Yeah, 6 inches of topsoil between is all that's keeping us going.
All that sustains life. That and the bees. Okay,
so
vegetables.
You wanted to talk about growing sweet potatoes, and I said, knock yourself out, because I have never grown sweet potatoes out in my garden. I've grown the ornamental sweet potato vines, and you pull those up in the fall and you'll see those little potato-like structures on the roots. But tell us all about growing sweet potatoes.
Ornamental sweet potatoes were a mistake, right? Have I ever told you that story?
Yes, yeah. I think I recall that.
Yeah, I think Alan Armitage actually told me that when I was in a greenhouse. And I was like, oh, that makes sense, because it was like the University of Georgia or something. And they had this one great sweet potato vine that made a great vine, but it didn't make very good sweet potatoes. And so somebody said, hey, why don't we turn this into an ornamental? And there you go.
There you go. And now there's a lime green and a dark purple leafed one.
And so many varieties therein.
Yeah. I mean, yes. Yeah.
So many
I don't
shapes.
have any this year. Usually I buy one or two, but I didn't this year.
I have one called Bewitched, I think. It is beautiful. It has kind of bat-shaped leaves. It's really cool. Okay, and that's the only one I grew this year. Marguerite was that sweet potato vine, by the way. That's what they named it. The one that, didn't produce anything. All right, so sweet potatoes. They are so easy to grow. So easy to grow in my climate. Totally easy. Like you couldn't screw them up. And I have a picture of my garden in my potager where I grew them one year, and those suckers just took over, but they were kind of splendid in their takeoverness. You notice how we're doing that this time? So you can buy slips, or you can create your own organic sweet potatoes. I'm not supposed to tell you that. I'm supposed to pretend that you have to buy slips from some wonderful company because you might end up with some potato disease, but they're not even related to potatoes. They're in a totally different class. And the thing is I have grown them from organic sweet potatoes, and a lot of my friends have too. And so they come in 3 kinds. Japanese sweet potatoes, which is my all-time favorite. It's red on the outside, has beautiful, dry, white flesh, is not that sweet. It's barely sweet, which is what I want. I also eat the orange fleshed ones because they are so good, and there's a bunch of different varieties of those. Beauregard is a very famous one. And then there's the purple ones, and the purple ones are super, super famous because of the Blue Zone diet. And now you can find them at, like, for example, Natural Grocers for a very, very pretty penny. I mean, they're very expensive to buy.
I looked those up, Dee. I looked those up.
I noticed you did. They're a very important ingredient in the traditional Okinawan diet, which is Okinawa is one of the blue zones. I am not in love with the blue sweet potato. It has a little bit of a mealy texture, which is not my jam. But if you wanted to grow it or regular Japanese sweet potatoes, you could go buy yourself some organic ones at Natural Grocer or somewhere else that you know they're truly organic, and you could grow them and it wouldn't be hard. So, what else do you want to hear about sweet potatoes?
Well, I looked them up on Johnny's Selected Seeds because I thought, well, that blue one might be interesting to grow. And is it too
Mm-hmm.
late? And they
Mm-hmm.
put on the website that they ship those things late May. So it would not be too late. It tells me that they like warm soil.
Yeah, because they're a tropical.
Yes.
Sweet potatoes are tropical. Oh, I should say this. You harvest them right before a freeze
Yeah, it
because
says,
you don't want everything to die back because that's hard on them. So you harvest them right before freeze. You pull off all of those, the vines off the potatoes, and then you harden them off inside a cabinet, and you'll have sweet potatoes for quite a while.
now, Johnny says you want to harvest them before the soil temperature dips to 50 degrees Fahrenheit or below. And he
Makes
says
sense.
you need to cure them in a warm place that's 85 degrees. And I'm thinking, where does one find an 85-degree place when the soil temperature is down to 50 degrees? That would be tricky for
Nah,
me.
it would be very tricky for me. I mean, remember that Johnny's Selected Seed is talking about market growers,
Yes, they
and
are.
maybe they have a nice warm greenhouse to put them in. I don't know. My greenhouse at that point isn't heated yet, so that wouldn't work. I think I would just bring them inside my house and put them in a
Yeah.
cabinet and let it go.
So we were talking about relatives and how the sweet potato is not related to the potato, but the
No,
potato is related to the petunia. They're in the same family.
and the sweet potato, I think, is related to morning glories, isn't it?
Yes, it's in the morning glory family,
The
which I
ipomoeas.
yes, I cannot think what the morning glory family is called.
Well,
Convolvulaceae.
Lycia, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
Convolvulaceae. But anyway, we digress momentarily. Now, I could order from Johnny's, but they're sold out.
Hang on just a second. The Convolvulaceae family is known as the bindweed family.
Well, yeah, bindweed and morning glories, which yeah,
Of
and
course, right?
yeah,
I mean,
of
I was
course.
like, of course, and that explains why morning glories and sweet potatoes are abundant. Anyway, you tried to buy some from Johnny's or were thinking about it, and they are sold out. Of course they are, because the
Well,
Blue Zone diet is very popular right now.
yeah, they're sold out. I didn't check any other varieties. And quite frankly, I simply do not have more room out there. I've maxed the space, which reminds me out in my vegetable garden, there are two things I still need to sow, but I was waiting for that arch trellis to arrive. It has not arrived, the arbor. I don't know where it is. I have to check with the company because I
Yeah,
was going to put scarlet runner bees up one side and gourds up the other side. And I'm thinking,
fun. You're running out of time though.
well, I thought I'm this afternoon I'm going to sow those seeds in some little containers so that when the thing finally arrives, because I think what they did is when you order it, they
Uh-huh.
ship it to you from China.
Uh,
And I'm like,
yeah.
if I had known that, I would never have ordered it. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah,
And now I'm
bummer.
going to do a quote.
Okay.
Many people lose the small joys in the hope for the big happiness. Pearl S. Buck.
Who I love to read.
Yes.
Okay, on the bookshelf, we got this book because why? Because you and I both went, oh, he wrote it, so therefore we need to have it.
It's The Gardening Book by Monty Don. And I was down at the Wild Geese bookstore in Franklin earlier this spring. And they had a copy on the shelf. I knew that because I saw her on Instagram going through. They don't have that many gardening books. And I'm like, do you need me to tell you which gardening books to get? But anyway, they had it. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to buy that. And I texted you and says, I'm going to buy this. And you says, I'm going to buy it too. So we both bought copies of The Gardening Book by Monty Don, which just came out
Yeah,
this spring.
and he says it's really, really simple, but I'm actually looking at this one section and it is not, I mean, it's simple by Monty Don standards, but I don't think it's that simple,
Well, the
you know?
subtitle is An Accessible Guide to Growing Houseplants, Flowers, and Vegetables for Your Ideal Garden.
Yes, and it's a beautiful book. It's
It
just
is.
beautiful. And it makes me, I'm going to take it to bed with me every night and just look at it because the pictures of all of the food in it is just extraordinary. It's a little bit like having Monty in your living room and not just on the television set. And can I just say that these books that are produced in England, I don't know where they're actually,
This is from
printed.
Clarkson Potter is the name of the publisher. Clarkson Potter, New York.
Doesn't Clarkson Potter also do Sarah Raven's books?
I would
Guess.
not know for sure, but I would say
I would guess.
yes.
Because
you
you know
keep
what?
talking about the book, and I'll tell you here in a minute.
These photographs are absolutely beautiful. And of course, he has a beautiful garden, and that makes it all the better. And I will say that there's a lot of things in here that are simple things, but they are things that I feel like have been lost a little bit in American gardening. American gardening, sometimes, at least in the communication part of it, is very task oriented and result oriented. We spend a lot of time talking about do this to get this result. And I think sometimes we forget that there's a certain pleasure in it. And like only in an English gardening book would they talk about his tools and then take absolutely beautiful, fabulous pictures of them. All clean.
Yes. By the
all
way,
clean, but used.
Sarah Raven and Monty Don do not have the same publisher.
They don't. Well, they both have beautiful photographs
Yes.
that are, and they resemble each other, these two. And I like how he talks. I mean, not all of it is going to work for the United States. Snowdrops don't work in my climate, but that's okay.
They work in mine.
I know they do. And
You're jealous.
I'm not real jealous because they're only 2 inches tall and they don't last very long. So it's okay. I can grow leucojum. Makes me happy. Hellebores, his section on hellebores is great. But there's a lot in here about just good old gardening chores, like how to mulch properly, how to divide your perennials properly, how to separate. I'm sorry to say celebrate, how to separate them and pop them up well. So it's a little bit like Gardener's World in pages.
I was just getting ready to say, this is like taking Gardener's World where the segments where Monty is showing you how to do stuff and putting it all into a book.
Which is very helpful because do you remember it after you turn off Gardener's World? I actually watched a little bit of it this morning. I don't always remember. Sometimes I remember where they visit, but a lot of stuff I already know how to do. But at the same time, I think his section on growing sweet peas is fabulous.
Yeah.
And it really gives you some good information.
Well, and I just turned his section on bulbs in grass, which you know that I do that in the backyard.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
You do have to do a tiny bit of translating.
Yeah.
As far as he's in a different climate than either one of us are in. And so you have to think, like you said, snowdrops don't work in your climate. And then he's got bulbs in grass. He'll put things like tulips and is what he's showing a picture of. Well, I wouldn't put tulips in grass because I do have to mow well before Monty even thinks about mowing.
Right, because our grass grows differently.
Which, by the way, speaking of remembering, not remembering, 2 things. I think it was last week's segment. Monty was reestablishing lawn in his garden after having not taken it out because he said the grandkids need a place to run and not worry about knocking into stuff. And so look for lawn resurgence in the UK. Just kidding.
I mean, they already love their lawns. It's just a matter of how much they can let them grow. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. I'm glad
it is a beautiful book. The other thing it reminded me this week, I haven't watched the whole thing, but I did watch the segment with the National Iris Collection.
I haven't gotten to that point yet. I had to quit and go outside.
And I did. And as Monty reminded, when somebody has a declared national collection, they do have to have open days in their garden.
Yep, they do. Because you have the national collection. That way people can come see it and see what's available. Anything else we want to say?
Nope. That is the gardening book by Monty Don.
Ready for the quote?
You bet.
I'm constantly amazed by the breadth and diversity of landscapes on the planet. I'm also in awe of the resilience of life, like the sea run river herring that return to rivers where they historically spawned as soon as barriers like dams are removed. Emily Farr. I did look up Emily, and she is a naturalist and she cares deeply about the planet. So I thought that was beautiful though. All right, the dirt.
Give us the dirt. You found it, Dee. It's a YouTube video.
It is. It's a YouTube video, and it's from K. I don't know what they're. I think it's KFR. Anyway, it's one of our news stations, our local news stations. There's a couple, and they live out west of me. I think they live in Calumet. They own a garden called Pugh Gardens, which they have now opened to the public, and it's Daniel and Ruthie Pugh. And I have been to their garden at least twice. It is bigger than mine, I think, or at least the same size. And Daniel, in my opinion, is I will see if I can get this word out right. Indefatigable. How do you say that? He does not fatigue. However you say that word, indefatigable. I can't say it. Anyway, he is not fatigued at all. And he's older than me. So I can't really figure out how he doesn't get tired. And he has built the most beautiful garden, and Ruthie loves plants too. And she does a lot of the planting. It is a cool garden to go visit. And is this a great stay or what? Went out there to visit their garden and did a little piece on it. And they've come out to my garden numerous times too. Our garden, in fact, they were here this spring, and I gave them some leucojum and a couple of other things. And they're just such good, kind people. They do charge for people to come visit, but they are open all summer.
Cool.
And they're kind of turning it into an arboretum of sorts, or a botanical garden. And what is cool about their garden versus my garden is it's out west of Oklahoma City. And so it's much drier than mine is. And they have a forested area, a big, huge pond, way bigger than my pond. God love them. And then they also have a nice, sunny, dry garden too, and a beautiful home that is set in the center of this place. So
Cool.
just gorgeous.
I will check out that
our dirt.
video. I will check out
and
the video.
Yeah, and Daniel makes beautiful paths with these gorgeous pieces of artwork that he makes out of rock. Like he makes turtles, and it's
I've
flat in
seen
the
paths like that. Those are great.
Yeah, he's really good.
We'll have to find out his secret to never tiring out.
I don't know what that is, because I am tired this week. But, all in all, I will say this. The more you work in your garden, the stronger you get.
That is absolutely the truth. Absolutely.
Because I was picking up logs and moving them today, and Bill was like, "You are unbelievably strong." And I just laughed. It's like, I'm unbelievably sore. But that's okay. You want to do the next quote?
To be silent the whole day long, see no newspaper, hear no radio, listen to no gossip, be thoroughly and completely lazy, thoroughly and completely indifferent to the fate of the world is the finest medicine a man can give himself. Henry Miller.
What did you think of when you read this quote? Because I thought of...
Yeah, get off social media and just don't pay attention to nothing for the day. And the world still spins, sun sets, sun rises. And you didn't have to, it didn't rely on you worrying about it to do that. It just moves along.
Yeah, and worry doesn't get us anywhere. I thought, oh my gosh, Henry Miller would be totally beside himself about cell phones.
Oh my gosh.
I really try to leave mine inside. And I've also told my gardening coaching clients, even though we didn't get to go to Big Cedar this year, I stayed on vacation because I needed a break.
Yeah.
And they were all very understanding.
That's good.
There you go.
That's good.
Tell me about your rabbit hole.
So I'm still doing a bunch of reading, and we're going to talk about one of the books next week. But, as I approach the end of the Agatha Raisin series, I'm like, I have to have another cozy mystery series. I did find out that the Aunt Dimity series that I finished last summer, I think it was last summer, she expects to have another book out in 2025, and she just kind of hit a wall and just couldn't do it anymore.
How many did she have?
It's got to be in the 30s. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah.
And so the author of the Agatha Raisin books, MC Beaton, she died in 2019, I think. but I
Mhm.
think that somebody was authorized to carry on the series. I think
Yeah.
I have to research that
Did
some
you,
more.
and speaking of books, did you hear that? Oh, now I'm not good. I had his name. Okay, so Patterson, that he
James
is finishing.
Patterson.
James Patterson has finished Michael Crichton's last book.
Okay, and I don't
Because
really know this.
okay, so Michael Crichton wrote Jurassic Park.
Right.
He was a prolific, intelligent writer. He was both a doctor and I want to say he might have even been he was very smart. And so he died of cancer pretty suddenly, about 3 years after he married his wife. And he was working on a book and he wrote about disasters sometimes, just different things. And anyway, he had done all this research on this book, and his wife found it, and she waited a really long time, like 14 years. And then she actually reached out to James Patterson because she thought he could finish the book, and
Uh-huh.
he did. And they're both really pleased with it. So it's coming out. You could read that. It'd be a page turner. Not really
I
cozy, though.
Yeah, see, I'm gonna confess that I've never really gotten into the James Patterson or Michael Crichton books at all.
Crichton. Mm.
Never really gotten into any of those. I have seen the Jurassic Park movies, obviously.
Well, and they didn't always write about that kind of thing. And James Patterson, of all the books he's written, my favorite are his Alex Cross books. I think those are fun to read. But I think those are actually young adult. But anyway, I haven't read him in a long time because I read different stuff now. But
Yeah.
I never read Jurassic Park, but I read, he wrote one about, oh, Michael Crichton wrote so many things. He was criticized a lot too. Anyway, enough about that. Garden commissions. Oh, wait, I have to do my rabbit hole.
You
I'm
do.
just still listening to Sarah Raven's podcast. I did a Instagram reel about Bermuda grass this week, and then I also did one about how I'm letting some of my asters just grow normally. I posted that this morning, which is we're recording this on Sunday, and it was because of something I heard in her podcast.
Cool.
That's
All
it.
right. Now the garden commissions.
You go first.
So I really am I've got to prune up some lilacs and stuff. And some of the shrubs out in this one area getting kind of big and it's sort of a
Mm-hmm.
pain to reach up there. So I'm very excited to report that I have purchased one of those shrub trimmers that's on the long pole so that I can reach
Cool.
some of the bigger stuff. It's the Works brand. I'm using the same brand I always have. So the
Yeah.
batteries are interchangeable. It's sitting in a
Yep.
box in the garage. It just arrived. So probably this afternoon, I will be unboxing that and then I'm going to give that a test spin. So I think this is our last cool week and then it's supposed to get hot. So it's kind of, hitting the stride of mowing, checking the vegetable garden, pulling weeds when they come up, which is all the time. That's pretty much it. Nothing big planned.
Cool. Okay, so we used our chainsaw on a pole to cut down those limbs this morning.
Cool.
And we use what brand do I use? I can't even think of it right now.
I have no idea. I've forgotten. I know
DeWalt.
I use Works and you use DeWalt.
Yeah, because that's what we had in drills, and they're all the same batteries. So I'm going to keep sprucing up by weeding and mulching, and I'm cutting trees out of the back garden's edge because I always have trouble with elm trees trying to grow into the edge of that garden.
Mm-hmm.
And just making everything a little more beautiful. And it's not going to be perfect, but they won't care. I keep telling myself that. 2 roses came from Heirloom Roses, and I will pop them up this week. Just so people know, it's Sunbelt Plum Perfect. I'm really liking that Sunbelt series. And Celestial Night. I tried to grow Celestial Night once before because I grew it for my mother, in honor of my mother, because her favorite color was purple, and I killed it. But these are already potted up and leafed out. And although Heirloom Roses, their roses are a bit pricier than some, they come looking fabulous. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
And I'm going to say one last thing. Teresa has texted me again with some more samples of yellow roses. And she actually has a blog post, Bloom Time Friday Yellow, probably lists a whole bunch. And I'm going to head out there and look those up.
What did she suggest this morning?
So she suggested Vanessa Bell for yellow.
That's very beautiful yellow.
Beautiful, a little bit on the white yellow side. And then Imogen, Imogen.
I grow Imogen. Imogen is not a climber, but it is a
She
beautiful rose.
says gorgeous, but not as much bloom power as Vanessa Bell. At this
Mhm.
point, I would take a rose that just doesn't get too wide. How's that?
Okay, so Imogen doesn't get wide, it grows very vertical. And you know what you could do is just leave Rise Up Amber Nest behind Imogen or whatever you choose. And then you could have that bloom power all summer and then have Rise Up Amber Nest go as the climber. Just a
No,
thought.
I'm not doing that. They're getting moved.
Has anybody ever noticed how regimented you are?
I am not regimented. That's ridiculous. And
I think you are.
on that note, we want to thank you for listening to the Garden Angelist. I hope you've hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. We publish every week on Wednesdays at 12 a.m. Eastern Time.
And if you listen to Apple Podcasts, we'd love a 5-star review. That helps us get noticed by the stupid algorithm. Could you also share our podcast with your friends? Word of mouth is still the best way to get the word out there.
And be sure and check out our show notes for links for more information about today's topics, plus links to our own websites.
And subscribe to our free Substack newsletter, The Garden Angelist, at substack.com. Also linked to in our show notes. If you do, you'll get a link to listen early, a day early.
And if you want to help support us, use those affiliate links. If you buy something after clicking through on them, we earn a small commission and it costs you nothing.
Or you can set up a monthly subscription through Buzzsprout or make a one-time donation through PayPal.
Thank you to everyone who has done so. It helps us pay for the podcast hosting.
It was lovely to chat with all of you over the garden gate. Bye until next week.
Bye, everybody.